My name's Sarah Fleming. I'm the president and head coach of the DNA Weightlifting Club. I work mostly with beginners. I also have a project I do called Practical Strength for Trainers, where we work with trainers and coaches to improve their ability to coach effectively in the weight room. This video is going to be about a couple of drills that I use with my weightlifters to improve certain aspects of their lifts. These are the cues that I use. Sometimes I have to change those for the lifter if they understand things differently or move differently, and understand that these cues are not very much different from most of the other coaches out there. We all kind of speak the same language, but we use different words. So we're going to do some pulls off of blocks and some first pull from the ground and some deficit pulls today. The Olympic lifts in a lot of ways are like a throw. They're about setting up the bar and applying enough velocity at the right times such that when you get it into the final power position, you're in an optimal position to exert the most amount of force on it as quickly as possible. And that position is basically right here in the hip crease. So for your clean, it's where you hit it here. Your snatch, you're going to hit it about here. And even though we can, get into this position from a hang, we're using a lot of different energy to kind of keep the bar suspended before we move it into place. Plus, we tend to get a little bit taller and a little bit more forward into the balls of the feet. So using a block pull to work on this part of the lift makes it a lot easier since they don't have anything else to think about. And we're going to set it up just the same way you would if you were going through the lift itself. We're going to do it with a clean here. Feet are in the same position. You want to push your hips back because your hips are behind you when you clean. A lot of folks get into the problem of pushing their hips forward, doing a hang clean, and then they're basically using their jumping muscles. However, we want to use the posterior chain, which is your back, your glutes, your legs, everything all together. That's not to say we don't use our quads, but this is the top of the extension. It's very powerful because you're basically contracting everything from the back of your head down to your heels. And if you can't do that with a great deal of power, you're missing out on a lot of power that you can express on the bar. So when we set up, get your feet in the proper position, get your weight where you want it, which for some people is going to be over the instep, some people is going to be in the heel. We're going to push our hips back and then roll the bar back to our thighs. We don't want to do this where we push our knees forward. So hips back, roll the bar back into position, tighten up the back, and then we're just going to pull from here. And we're going to work on not only exerting a lot of force with the hips, but pulling those shoulders back, getting the chest up, and by doing that, we're contracting the entire posterior chain. Again, we're going to roll it in and get it here. This is the part of the lift where you want to work on speed and correct position. The second pull begins just above the knee. And what we want to think about with this part of the lift is that we are going to be accelerating to that point of maximum power when we get into this hip crease. What a lot of folks make the mistake of is they get to their knee and they pull it out away from them, and then they lose a lot of their power and control of the bar. We want the bar to be as close to the midline as possible through this part of the lift. So we really want to brush it up the thighs till it gets into that hip crease, and then boom, your explosion happens. So for this part, it's very similar to the last part. You're going to get your feet in position, push those hips way back, and then pull the bar into your knees. And what we're going to do is think slow to fast. We're going to pull the bar and accelerate it into the hip crease, and when it hits this part, we're going to extend. So it's slow, fast. Again, slow, fast. I purposely slow down my lifters on these because they need to learn what each position feels like. Some people would say that you need to do them at full speed. I don't agree with that. However, I work with a lot of beginners and people who've had bad technique for a while, so we need to undo a lot of those faults. First pull is probably the trickiest one to teach. A lot of folks, when they start lifting, pretty much deadlift the bar, and once it gets to their knees, they jump with it and catch it. And that can work. It doesn't work once you kind of hit body weight, or sometimes even less than that. What we want to think about is the first pull is very different from the second pull. Eventually we'll blend them together so that they are seamless and don't seem that much different at all. But when I'm teaching beginners, I teach them as a separate lift. The thing to remember, it's not a deadlift. We're going to try and start with our hips lower. Not everybody can get into that low hips position, so we kind of work them down gradually. But the thing that we want to think about is during the first pull, the hips and shoulders rise together, and that means your back angle is going to be constant. What typically happens is you'll see your lifter get down here, and then their hips go up, and then they pull like this. What we want them to do is the bar starts over the toe, somewhere between where the toes start and when the toes end. Some people are different depending on their levers. We want to get down to that nice clean position, and then we're going to push the knees back, and my back angle should have remained constant. So again, push the knees back, and now the bar is above my knee. I don't have to worry about hitting it or hitting my shins. You should never hit your shins. You should never have bloody shins from a clean. And this is a movement you can do overloaded with heavy weight to develop some postural strength in that lower position. You can then start to blend the first and second pull together by taking it from here, having them pause, and then up the leg fast. So in that respect, you've got slow knees back, accelerate into the crease, and pop it up. I think it's helpful to teach beginners that way, and eventually once they develop the motor patterns, it's very much like throwing a discus or a shot put. It just all blends together and they know where to put their body at each place in the lift. If you have a lifter that's having a really hard time transitioning on that first pull to heavier lifts, for example, they do just fine on lighter lifts, but the weight goes up and those hips shoot up early, either work with them with heavier weight or try them doing it from a deficit. And on a deficit, they basically have to start in a lower position, and they're going to accelerate through that position that they normally start in. But again, hips and shoulders rise together. I will often combine that with a pull or a high pull. So go from the first pull from a deficit and then pull it through. You can go to full cleans, but that's kind of advanced and I wouldn't recommend that with beginners. But you can go from here, knees back, to there. And that kind of gets them used to the two different phases of the lift and getting them pulling their shoulders back, chest up on the final pull without having to worry about catching it.